The next day, there's another one. Jesus decided to go to Galilee. He found Philip and said to him, "Follow me." Now, Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. So, this is day 4 since the religious leaders came to John the Baptist and asked him if he was the Messiah, and we picked up our narrative. But this today is a different kind of encounter than what we've been seeing up to this point. It says Jesus found Philip. I like that phrase. Sometimes you don't find Jesus. Jesus finds you. And there are some of you in this room that know exactly what I mean by that. Jesus simply finds Philip and says, "Follow me." Now that word has to do with obedience. That's part of remaining. You got to follow if you're going to remain, right? So now we don't know what it is that convinced Philip to follow Jesus. Maybe he was really good friends with Andrew and Simon. Maybe there was a conversation that isn't recorded here that he had with Jesus beforehand. But it doesn't really matter what the background of the story is, because when Jesus says, "Follow me," that's what Philip does. See, John is just cutting to the chase. And Philip just follows. And a little bit more. As we continue on in the narrative, Philip found Nathanael and said to him, "We found him whom Moses in the law and also the prophets wrote, Jesus of Nazareth, the son of Joseph." Nathanael said to him, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" And Philip said, "Come and see." See, Philip was found by Jesus, and then Philip goes and finds Nathanael. And the only thing he says to Nathanael is, "We found the Messiah, come and see. Follow and watch." Now, Nathanael, I think understandably, is a bit skeptical. Maybe it's because it's a second-person testimony invitation kind of deal. Like, he didn't see Jesus at any point. But look at when he hears Jesus of Nazareth. He says, "Nazareth?" Like, that's his point of contention, isn't it? Nothing good can come out of Nazareth. Are you sure about this, Philip? Now, we don't have to know much about Nazareth to know, based on his reaction, that Nazareth is some sort of backwater place, because there's disdain in that response. God couldn't work there. Nothing good comes out of a place like that. Those people, they're weird. They probably married their cousins. You don't... But that's where Jesus comes from. And this, I think, is one of the great themes that we encounter at Christmas. Of course, we love all of the talk of angels, and we put angels everywhere, and we talk about the glory of God and all of these kinds of things. But one of the great themes of Christmas is that God didn't choose the best of everything for himself. He didn't come from a successful family or royalty or even a highly esteemed group of people. He didn't go to the best schools. He didn't have great mentors in his life. God was born to a poor teenage mother. He was born among animals. He grew up a carpenter's son in a backwater village. And you can see in Nathanael's response that he thinks, and maybe we do too, generally speaking, that if something is good, it will come from someplace respectable. Respectable people with respectable backgrounds. Those are the kinds of people that we follow, not mundane, average, everyday kind of people from weird places. But the story of Christmas says God's glory tends to come down in mangers and crosses, not thrones, and into the lives of desolate people who are really on the edges of respectability already, who are really ready to see. So Nathanael is skeptical about what Philip says, but he goes along with Philip. He wasn't expecting to be confronted with glory that day, but look at what happens. Jesus saw Nathanael coming toward him and said of him, "Behold, an Israelite indeed, in whom there is no deceit." Nathanael said to him, "How do you know me?" And Jesus answered him, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." I love where Jesus starts with this, with Nathanael. An Israelite indeed. Because I think it indicates that Nathanael wasn't one who simply followed the law out of some sort of rote responsibility. Like he wasn't just going through the motions of being a follower of God. I got to do all the religious high days. I got to make my sacrifices. And in the meantime, I'm going to defraud people and, do whatever else I can do and maybe go back to confession the next week. I don't know how I mixed in Catholicism into that. Sorry. But this isn't Nathanael, right? He's not doing one thing while he says something else. There's no deceit, according to Jesus, in his worship of God. He's authentic, in other words. And that's what Jesus says about Nathanael. And Nathanael's like, excuse me, come again? What was that? Have we met? How do you know anything about me? And Jesus says, oh, that's easy. I saw you when you were under the fig tree. See, Jesus already knew him, even though Nathanael didn't know Jesus. And of course, the Psalms tell us that God's knowledge of us is all-encompassing. Right? He has this abiding knowledge about each and every one of us. But this whole story is giving us this picture about how Jesus is building his kingdom. That's what he's doing here. From John the Baptist all the way through the calling of Nathanael, only Philip is directly called by Jesus. Isn't that interesting? The rest hear testimony about him and follow him. It's almost like Jesus is setting a pattern about how the rest of us are going to come to him. Look at Nathanael's response. Nathanael answered him, Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel. Now, why does he say that? I think it's because apparently no one could have known what Nathanael was doing underneath that fig tree before Philip found him. To this day, we have no idea what Nathanael was doing. It's not in the text, not anywhere. If anybody says they think they know what Nathanael was doing under their fig tree, you can move on because they don't. It's all speculation. We have no idea why, because it's not in any of the accounts, which means neither Jesus nor Nathanael told anyone. It was that private, whatever was happening there. And all we know about what happened under the fig tree is that whatever it was, Nathanael realized that Jesus knew, and all of his intellectual doubts were blown away. He looked at Jesus and said, how could anybody have, you have to be the Messiah, you have to be the King, you have to be him. And Jesus says, because I said to you, I saw you under the fig tree, do you believe? You will see greater things than these. You will see. Boy, that just keeps coming up in this passage, doesn't it? Do you understand that the issue involved in all of these encounters with Jesus is the expectations? And whether or not people had the expectation to see Jesus or not have the expectation to see Jesus.